Create in me a clean heart, renew my soul. Create in me a clean heart, renew my soul.
Little backstory on the two of us. So we have actually been best friends, give or take, since kindergarten. Delexi was a little hard to get to. She cried every moment of every day.
Every day.
So mostly I just felt bad for her, and I was like, this girl needs a friend. Took her under my wing, and, the rest is history.
Yeah.
She's gained a little weight since then, but
It is
she's
the baby.
pregnant. Baby is due in July. It's very exciting. Anyway, so a little bit about us. We've been, best friends since kindergarten, which has been the biggest blessing. We might get into our friendship a little bit as we talk here, but just, kind of the beauty of that gift and really surrounding yourselves with people who will lead you closer to Christ. And just how important that is, and, how we're not called to be on this journey alone. To be honest, and it sounds so cheesy, but I wouldn't be who I am today without her and having a friend, who really called me on and made me better. But now that you know just a little bit about us, we want to know a little bit about you. So next part's going to be a little bit of participation from you all. But we just had a quick question for you. So what is the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning? Very first thing.
Not a trick question.
I put on my glasses because I'm a lot of contacts right now.
Good. So anyone couldn't hear, she puts on her glasses. Can't see without them. It's important. Anybody else? Anyone else? I know I hit snooze probably 5 times in a row. Okay, great. Well, thanks to all of those of you who shared.
I was thinking back because we were asking ourselves the question, we're like, what is the first thing we do when we wake up? And I was thinking back to high school, and I would wake up, I'd go and I'd wash my face, and then I would apply this bright blue eyeshadow. I thought it looked great at the time because we had these navy uniforms. And
Really pulled in the blue.
Oh, it just makes it pop. It looks so good. Someone should have told me not to wear that eyeshadow. It was not pretty.
It was cute.
Thank you.
I was thinking, she remembered that. I was thinking back and I was like, I never did that. I looked great. She was a weirdo. No, just kidding. She looked way better than me. At least it matched our colors. I had somebody once tell me, you have green eyes. You should wear green eyeshadow. And I was like, yeah, that'll make my eyes look so good. And then she was like, also purple looks really good with green. It makes them pop. And I was like, yes, you're so right. So I do green eyeshadow. And you better believe I put purple on top of that. And, green and purple eyeshadow every day. Mm-hmm. Don't do that.
No. And so we were kind of asking ourselves, we're like, why do we do the things that we do in the morning? Although it was just blue eyeshadow, it was like I was trying to impress everyone around me. Like the cute boy at the locker next to me, who I don't even know why I cared. But instead of showing my true self, you know what I mean? I had really bad acne in high school, things like that.
Yeah, and I think, obviously these little things that we do, they're not bad, they're not wrong. The first thing we do in the morning, we're not standing here asking you that question to be judging you, what do you do? This is the life or death answer. But it does say a lot about who we are and where we're at, because that first thing you do in the morning is essentially what's driving you to get out of bed, right? And that essentially is what's driving your entire day. So, whether or not, whatever that is for you, whatever you're putting your identity in, but I think that's kind of what we were talking about is, what were we doing? Why were we wearing this eyeshadow? What was the point of that? And to be noticed or to, whatever it is, whatever, you wanted that cute boy at the locker next to you to be like, oh, that purple and green eyeshadow really makes your green eyes pop. Yeah, right. But really, whatever it was, for me, if it's fall, my everything was I'm the soccer captain. Like that's everything that's important. And then when it switched to winter, it was okay, like we've got to make it to state for basketball this year. Like that's everything. Everything revolves around that. But then what happened when I had a bad game? Or what happened when I did not leave the bench for the entire 90 minutes? Or what happened when I made JV instead of varsity? But that was my entire identity was wrapped up into that. Then what? When I don't have that anymore. And so, like Delexi was saying, the things that we do and the things that drive us aren't as minuscule as they seem.
Right. Yeah. I just kind of building off of that, I know in high school, I just, and still today, I wanted to be loved for who I was. I wanted, to have people know that my faith actually meant something to me and not only accept me, but to like me for it. And I felt like, oh, they're going to find this out about me, and then I'm just going to be put in this box. Like, oh, she's one of those. Instead, I wanted to be relatable. I felt kind of cool. But I think cool. Thank you. I think sometimes blending in just seemed easier. So it was easier to just kind of put it on like the back burner. But I was just kind of trapping myself in these perceptions that people had of me.
Yeah, for sure. So I think kind of like I was saying, for Delexi, it was the academics and making sure that you got the best grades and getting that scholarship for college. And, for me, it was the sports and getting that scholarship or whatever. But then, when that's what our entire identity is wrapped up in, like I said before, what happens when that's taken away? And how often are we putting ourselves in boxes based upon our own perception of ourselves and based upon other people's perceptions of ourselves? So it's not even necessarily who we want to be, but who we think other people want us to be.
Like we feel like we need to have a certain identity.
Yeah.
And yeah, like she said, I remember in high school I'd get a lower grade than I'd get a B or a C on something, and I would be so discouraged, and it wouldn't even necessarily be because I was like, oh, I didn't understand the content. It would be like, well, who am I now? Like, I thought that I was going to be the academic one. I was going to excel at this, and what the problem is when you put your identity in that, when it's gone, it's like you're constantly left with the question like, well, then who am I supposed to be now? And that's kind of like a scary place to be, because then your identity is going to just keep floating around to what other people think of you, what you think of yourself at the moment, which is oftentimes we can be our own worst critic. So that's almost even scarier.
Yeah, and we're constantly thinking, yeah, who am I? And don't get any funny ideas up here that we're standing up here and being like, we know exactly who we are. Let me tell you, we are still asking that same question. Everyone is. Mm-hmm. We are constantly seeking for that answer. But I think that's where we're wrong, is the question we should be asking is not who are we, but whose are we? Who do we belong to? Where should our identity lie? And so that's the question that we want to pose to all of you, is not who are you or who do you want to be, but whose are you? And really understanding the fundamental difference in those two questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think when you're able to start there, then your mission can actually start, when your identity is placed in something secure. But I think that a lot of times we stay kind of in these areas of weakness, like whether it's self-pity, social media, or maybe like friendships that maybe aren't the best. It's going to vary. Maybe not giving God enough of your time. Maybe you guys are pretty good at it. I don't know. But I think that these habits should make us ask ourselves, where do my priorities lie? What are my priorities? And I think that our habits show them a lot more than kind of what we want them to. And I know I can be really easy on myself. If someone asks me where are my priorities, I'm like, oh, I go to Mass every Sunday. I'm usually pretty nice to my husband. Or, and it's like I think it's so easy to not even kind of reflect on our habits that we have every single day. And I think it's just because it's a habit. It's kind of just we get so used to it. And that's kind of why we wanted to start with the question of what is the first thing we do in the morning? Because I think that shows us that's where our priorities lie. And so it's great. So if I wake up, brush my teeth, eat breakfast, wash my face, go to work, those are great things, right? hygiene, good. But then if I haven't even woken up and given 2 seconds to thank God for the day, or to, offer my day up to him, at least 2 seconds, then I have put every single one of those things above him. And I think that's just the reality. And someone kind of called me out on that the other day. They were like, what does your day look like? I could list all the things I do. I went to church, I had this one brunch, blah, blah, blah. But it was like, did I wake up and did I start my day with prayer? And I think so often we kind of stay with the habits that we have, whether it's maybe we go on social media too much. I personally guilty of that. Or whether it's gossiping or kind of hearing a story about like a party last weekend and you're kind of just like, yeah, haha, totally was there, even though you weren't. And it's like, why do we try to make ourselves someone that we aren't? Or we try to be someone that maybe we don't even want to be. And maybe because we're scared, maybe because it's kind of like a scary situation to stand up in those moments, like as simple as making the sign of the cross at lunch. It can be as small as that to like standing up to something. But I kind of think it's just because I think we get really lazy. Society makes it easy to just be comfortable and just kind of get in our own ebb and flow and our own routine. But it made me think, like, where in our lives are we choosing comfort over carrying our cross? And a lot of times it's not as blunt as you think it is. It's going to be in those little habits in your daily life. But oftentimes those are the areas that God is calling us to grow the most. I don't know if any of you guys have ever listened to Father Mike Schmitz. He has really good podcasts. I love him. In a priest way. But he recently came out with this one, and he talks about how we can actually be our own worst enemy. And I think that goes to show, whether it's the lies that we believe about ourselves, or the habits that we keep ourselves in. But he says, there is a real spiritual battle going on right now. And we need to know, is our default battle, are we armed and are we ready to go in everyday life? Or are we just kind of kind of lukewarm? I'm fine where I'm at. I'm good. And I think, I know for me, if I check on a daily basis, I think it's so easy to just be like, no, I'm good. I'm doing fine. And he says it's a real act of courage to accept our mission, to actually stick to it, to know who you are, to know that you're loved, and to be able to actually stand up for your faith in the littlest of ways. He knows how hard it is. And I can guarantee you I choose comfort so many times, but I think oftentimes without realizing it. But I had to really start kind of seizing these opportunities in my life to pick up my cross, because I just realized I was missing out on so many graces that God wanted to give me. And so since I was about 5 years old, since I can remember, I've struggled with pretty severe anxiety. It's kind of it morphs itself into different things kind of since I've gotten older. But I remember just bawling on the phone one day. And I was just like, why me? Why do I have to go through this? I could be so normal and I could fit in so much better and I'd be so much better at school. I'd be so much better at sports if I didn't have this burden, and talk about self-pity, right? And I think it was my grandma. She called me out. She's like, Delexi, this is your cross. This is the exact area in your life where God is calling you to pick up that cross and to carry it with him. And he wanted to do it with me. That's the thing. He wasn't going to leave me by myself. And so I have to say that it's maybe not one of the biggest, but it's a huge blessing in my life, because what it does is it kind of forces me to choose the cross over comfort, because I can't do it on a daily basis without him. And so, again, it's going to look different for everyone, but I know for me, it's easy to get in kind of a monotonous routine of just, my desires, my wants, when I want it. But then it's a constant reminder in my mind, like, no, I am totally dependent on God. And so I guess I challenge you guys to ask yourself the question of, like, what do you make your God every day? What are the things that you don't even know that you're putting above him? Because I think so often it takes time to kind of reflect because we don't notice it. If the first thing we do we wake up and eat breakfast, like, that's great. But I challenge the first thing you do is to wake up and at least, give your day to God, because our actions speak for themselves. So in order to choose the cross over just the comfort of daily life, it just takes a lot of self-reflection and deliberate decisions.
And that is scary.
Mm-hmm.
Self-reflection. I mean, who wants to do that? Like Delexi was saying, yeah, like you sit there and think about it, and you're like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm pretty comfortable where I am. I'm going to stay right here.
Mm-hmm. And society just makes it so easy, too. That's the norm.
Right.
And that's why I think it's something that we have to be reminded of, just because if you look at anyone around you, it doesn't seem wrong.
And that's what I want to stand up here and say, is that self-reflection can be so scary, and, thinking like, okay, like, I need to put God first. Yes, absolutely. But does that mean you need to change your entire life and your entire day? In some ways, yes, like some restructuring maybe do, but it can be something as small as, even while you're still in bed, you haven't moved yet, and yet you train yourself to have your first thought be, thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you, God, for another day, and let everything I do be for you. Takes 2 seconds, easiest thing, and that will change the rest of your day. And so I think a lot of times, we can think about this self-reflection and, the things that drive us, the things that we're passionate about, the things that, we're desirous of, and we can kind of be told that these things are wrong, or that they're bad, or that they're dirty, but that is absolutely not true. The things that are put on our heart, especially as women, the things that we desire, they're there for a reason, and they have a purpose, and they're good, and they're beautiful. And, I think we're seeking something. Delexi and I started out by saying that we're seeking to find out who we are, right? Mm-hmm. And, so much of that is driven by our desires. And I think that, so obviously in our day-to-day, we're seeking to fulfill our desires, and that's not something that's just unique to women. The boys down there, they seek to fulfill their desires. They're seeking to find who they are. But there is something unique to women and exactly what we desire and how we seek that. And a lot of that is dependent on what you believe it means to be a woman. And, the world today tells us so many different things about what it means to be a woman, and how you should be, and who you should be, and how you should dress, and how you should talk, and, what your desire should be. We're constantly told who we should be. But we're never told whose we should be. And that's really the question we should be asking, and really what's important. And I think, like we started out saying, the things that we were trying to do, putting on the blue eyeshadow and the pink and green, the bottom line of that is we were desiring to be told that we were beautiful, that we were wanted, that we were cared for, that we were special. And that's something that we should have. As women, we should have that. We are the pinnacle of beauty. When God made us, we're the last thing that he made was woman, and he said, this is very good. We are so beautiful, and that, we should be told that that's what we have. And yet, is that why we spent 45 minutes every morning on our purple and green eyeshadow? Mm-hmm. For one moment of being told that we were beautiful? Or is that why, we spent months and months preparing for prom? Like, don't get me wrong, prom was so fun. We have so many fun memories from it. Like, it's a great time, but, like, did we really spend all this time just for one moment of affirmation? And the bottom line is no. What we were really seeking for is love, and lasting love. And the unique part about being women is that not only do we seek to be loved, but we have an innate desire to love in return. And I think that oftentimes, that is so fundamental to our being, and yet that is the thing that we are the most scared to let ourselves do. Because to love another person is so vulnerable. And, yet there is a truth to the fact that every single woman across all time and space has had this same deep longing to be adored to be chosen, and to be able to surrender. Okay, so those three things, I mean, they can take so many different paths and so many different, desires or whatever. You can look in so many different places, but all of us want to be fought for, right? All of us want to be worth a risk and a fight. And though this is the one thing that we desire so deeply, whether we recognize it or not, or where we're searching for it, this is also the one thing we've been trained to believe that we cannot have. Think about that. This is something we want more than anything else, and yet we are told over and over and over again, you can't have that. Why is that? Where does that come from? So if you think back, you go back to Genesis, the moment of the fall, I think that's where, Delexi talked about these lies that bombard us, and they're so hidden and so sneaky. And it all stems from that first moment of the fall. You go back to the garden, and actually the Hebrew word for serpent is nahash, which actually more accurately translates into dragon. So if you reimagine that moment back in Genesis, there's Eve by herself, and this huge, terrifying dragon approaches her. Okay, I don't know about you. I mean, I'm all about, the tough woman warrior, Captain Marvel stuff that's all going on. That's great, but if I'm in a garden alone and a huge dragon's coming up to me, by all means, husband, please come protect me. I doubt that Eve felt any differently, and yet where was he? He didn't come. And so in that moment, when Eve was there to fend off this dragon on her own, that was the moment that she internalized those lies that I am not worth fighting for, that I am not lovable, that I am not beautiful. And then the look on her face at that realization is what told Adam, that he doesn't have what it takes, that he's not good enough. And those same lies have taunted every single man across time and space ever since. And so these lies that are attacking us throughout history, is perfect for the evil one, because these lies are still what drive our desires. They're still what drives what we're seeking for. And yet, like I said, we sell ourselves so short because we believe we can't have it. So like I said, let's go back to those three core desires. We desire to be adored, to be chosen, and to surrender, right? And those can take so many different forms in our lives. And, like Delexi had talked about her struggle with anxiety and how it'd be so easy to just fall beneath the weight of that struggle and that pain. And yet I can see from the outside how much of that was her strength, because she saw it as a cross and she clung to it that way. And, that plays into those three desires. And for me, that took a very different form. For me, I sought so desperately for that love and that adoration that we all desire. And thinking back, my first memories are, of course, I sought that in my dad. And, that's how it should be. All of us should, have that adoration from our fathers. That's why the family is created the way that it is. And yet a lot of us don't have that. But I can remember, spending hours, literally hours and hours with my little plastic lawnmower in the backyard, following my dad around all day long, just toddling with my little lawnmower and giving up dolls to play catch and cherishing every bedtime story and whatever, and just thinking to myself, someday I want to marry someone just like him. And that's beautiful, and that's what it should be. Our Father should show us that love and admiration, but if you don't have that, or if that's taken away, and in my situation, my family went through some really hard times where that was just shattered for me, and I didn't have that anymore. And so I was seeking that admiration anywhere else that I could find it. So like I was saying, you're seeking these things, and yet they can take so many different forms. And so I was grasping at these things. In high school for me, I was seeking emotional gratification from anyone that I could get it from, and just wanting to be told that you are special, that you are beautiful, and putting on this face that everything's fine and everything's great, and not telling anyone my struggle, like Delexi was saying, same with her anxiety. Can't let anyone know you're struggling, keep that to yourself. And yet my whole world was falling apart, and all I wanted was for somebody to care enough to notice. That's why the green and purple eyeshadow. Weird, I know. Try a different route, but that's all that we want. We're seeking this love and admiration. We just want to be wanted, right? You just want to be wanted. That's all I wanted. And yet I didn't find that until I finally realized the true source of that love that I'm seeking. And for me, that actually happened at a retreat, kind of similar to the one you're at. I don't know what the first thing you all did when you woke up this morning. Maybe it was a little bit like, oh, I have to go to this Lenten retreat. Woohoo.
Press snooze 3 times.
That's kind of where I was at, to be honest. I was not amped about the retreat I was going on, and I was sitting there, and they asked us to pray to God the Father, and all of a sudden I was like, I don't pray to God the Father. Like, he's not safe. And if and when I prayed, it would be to Jesus. And I thought to myself, self-reflection, it's scary. It can open a lot of things, but trust me, in the end, it's so good and beautiful. But I was like, I don't pray to God the Father because in my head, I believed that I could not have a relationship with God the Father until I fixed my relationship with my earthly father. So backwards. God was just dying for me to realize, no, you need to have a relationship with me, your true and heavenly Father who loves you more than anything in the world. And from that, your relationship with your earthly father will be healed if you let me heal it. If you take up your cross, like Delexi was saying, and yet, like she said, he will not leave you to do it alone. He doesn't leave us alone. He wants to carry it for us. That's why he died on the cross for us. And so once I was able to pick up that cross and travel on that journey of forgiveness and healing with him, everything was changed. And I knew, once I surrendered myself over to the Holy Spirit, I knew that I was adored by the Father and had been chosen by the Son. My sisters, you are adored by God the Father. You are chosen by God the Son, and we are called to surrender to the Holy Spirit. And maybe some of us here are in similar situations. You're finding yourself desperately searching for this love to complete you, and yet you find that nothing will satisfy. And maybe you've even sought it in Christ. I know some of you mentioned the first thing you do when you wake up is pray. And that's beautiful. That's amazing. Don't stop doing that. I know that I had gone through periods where that's what I was doing. And I was like, I'm giving everything to you, and yet I still feel so lost. What else is it? And I think that's just recognizing, like I said before, not only are we called to love, but also to love in return. And so we need to truly open ourselves, not only to let him love us, but also to love him back. That is so fundamental to who we are as women, is to be receptive. That is the part of God that we were made in his image, is his receptivity. And so that's why we desire that so, so deeply. I think that once we open ourselves to do that, we know what our deepest desires as women are. And we know that ultimately we seek the Lord. Like I said, we're seeking love, right? That's the bottom line, what we seek. And we know from all of our coloring book stories and our Christian little tales that God is love, right? Cheesy, cliche, but it's true. And we know that. He really is. He is the embodiment of love. And so ultimately, whether we recognize it or not, we are seeking God. And once we realize that, we will be fulfilled. Again, those 3 core desires. We want to be adored, we want to be chosen, and we want to surrender. And the thing is that's beautiful is it's not only us seeking him, but he seeks us back. He wants to meet us right where we are. So no, we don't have to give up everything that we love or that we enjoy. He's going to meet us where we are, but you have to be open to letting him find you. And he fights for us. He died for us in all of our sin and all of our mess right there where you are. Whatever it is that you're struggling with, he knows already, but he just wants you to be open to letting him in. And even if you were the only person left on the face of this earth, he still would have come. He would have done exactly that just for you. So I think just kind of to wrap up, I know Delexi had challenged all of you to that self-reflection. And, here we are at, halfway through Lent? Mm-hmm. I don't know about all of you. This has not been my greatest Lent, to be totally honest. Like, we all have different struggles and whatever. And so just encouraging you to, do that self-reflection. And however small it is, having your first thought in your morning, tape something on your wall if you need to. Tape it on your phone. If the first thing you do is grab your phone, whether it's to snooze 10 times, whether it's to go on Facebook, put something on your phone that reminds you to just say thank you. It can be the littlest things, but just start doing those little things to open yourself up to receive his love. So now we're going to have some time for Q&A. Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
You said like the three things we want is to be adored, to be chosen, and to surrender. What do you mean by
Good question. So she asked the three things I'd mentioned that we desire: to be adored, to be chosen, and to surrender. And she asked what I meant by surrender. Very good question. I think that kind of plays into just our innate desire as women to be cared for and to be protected. And I think a lot of times that's something that we struggle with as women. I did for a long time. I put a lot of walls up and I was like, no, like, I don't need anybody else. Like, I am Gucci. I don't need you. Like, and I did that to God too. And I think, so kind of what I meant by surrender is that just, we're not in this alone. And if we're trying to walk the path of Christianity and Catholicism by ourselves, it will become incredibly difficult. I mean, it's already incredibly difficult in the world that we live in. And so I think just being able to surrender all that we are, because we have so many anxieties and so much pressure. We're told you got to ace your SATs and you have to get into the right colleges and get the right scholarships and be the best at this and the best at that. And kind of just being able to surrender all of that over to God and being like, bottom line, like, whose am I? I'm yours. And when I believe that and I give myself back to you, like, that's all that matters. And like, you will care for me and everything will be okay. And that's faith and that's trust. And it's true. I promise. Like, once I did that, there were so many things that are so stressful and I was like, okay, like, you're going to take care of it. And he does, and he won't leave us. Was that helpful? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, can you repeat that? Her question was, would feminism be good or bad? That's a good question.
Good question. I think, that's a very good question, especially.
There's a lot of angles to that.
Yeah, kind of in our
too.
society. I think that it is good, but I think that there are very different views on what that means. So, in my opinion, I think that true feminism looks like the Blessed Virgin Mother. Like, she is the true, or, whatever, saints you look at, Mother Teresa. Like, she's an incredible woman, like, and she believes in what women can do. And I forget who says it. Somebody has a quote, I should know this, but that says, we need who women are and not what they have. Is that right? I should probably check things before I quote something. I don't know. But it's something along those lines where God made us uniquely different from men and made us compatible with men because we have something to offer the world that they don't. And women are so necessary in this world, so necessary. And so in that sense, like, when you're thinking about how much we need women and the beautiful gifts that we have and, being able to nurture and, like, our strength and, but how that looks different than the strength that men have, I think in that sense, feminism is a very good thing. But that's something you have to be very careful with because, there are different ideas of what feminism is that I know we see a lot about in the media. And so I'd say I think there's a true feminism and kind of a false feminism. That's probably a confusing answer. Was that helpful at all?
Yeah, no, I think that's good.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So her question was, how did we deal with comparison? And I think that kind of has a lot to do with kind of looking at our habits. And we were asking ourselves the questions of, why do we box ourselves in to people's perceptions that they have of us? So like, oh, they probably think that I'm too Catholic, or I'm not sporty enough, and then you start to view yourself as that. And when that's where your identity is, how do you not compare? I mean, you're setting yourself up for comparison. And that's just, it can be poisonous for your relationships, for your friendships. And I can say we've been friends for how many years?
Don't age us here.
Like 15, 12, I don't know. I shouldn't guess. But
15 years probably.
Yeah, and we went kind of through, like, I can remember the different phases of our friendship, And when we tried to compete with each other, it never worked out, because what we were doing was, and I think it was more of an admiration thing. Like, I think, like, I looked at you and was like, wow, she's so good at this. She's so pretty. She's so good at sports, whatever. But then instead, I wasn't actually looking at my own gifts and how she loved me for exactly who I was. I didn't need to be someone else. I didn't need to look for the attention of everyone else. And so I know for me, something that really helps is limiting my social media time. And I know that's a kind of a cliche answer, but it honestly is so helpful to me, because I will find, without even noticing it, I'll be scrolling through, and my husband points it out. He's like, wow, your mood changed. And I'm like, what, really? He's like, yeah, you like, and I would have never even noticed it about myself. But I think it's like, what are we filling our minds with during the day? And I think that makes a huge difference when you start your day out in prayer, kind of like we said too. Is that helpful? I kind of went all over there, but.
Anybody else? Did anybody have something written down on a card that they didn't want to ask out loud? No. And I think kind of too, back on the comparison note, like, I think a lot of that is really helpful in like who your role models are.
Mm-hmm.
And so even like taking the time to read up on saints like Edith Stein, and kind of like hearing what their idea of women are, kind of back to the feminism bit too, like reading up on these incredible women who did incredible things, and like not looking at it from a point of comparison and being like, oh my gosh, like I know I did this all the time. Like I'd read about the saints and I'd be like, well, there goes the idea of Saint Corinne. Like I can never be as good as them. So, and like that's not the point, you know, but to like read about their lives and be inspired, you know, and thinking about, kind of like Delexi said, like as much as it is like I don't want to stand up here and like harp on social media, but like there is something to the fact that like think about how much time in a day we spend scrolling Instagram or whatever it is, and who you're looking at and who you're looking up to, and therefore comparing yourself to, and then being like, okay, not that you have to completely cut that out in your life, but then like maybe let's make equal time for reading up on the saints, and you know, reading up on Mother Teresa and looking at what she did and what she said, and you know, just kind of focusing in on like who your role models are, and yeah, and like trying, I don't know, encouraging your friends to do that, like make a little book club or something. I don't, like there's ways to kind of get other people involved and like do things together, and I don't know. Now I'm just thinking out loud.
I like the ideas.
Okay.
Create in me a clean heart, renew my soul. Create in me a clean